Welcome to the Newsmakers Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this is a show where we go behind the headlines every day to bring you an interview with a pastor, entertainer, politician, or other notable news figure. And this is a show, again, it's daily, but it's based on our weekly TV show, which is also called Newsmakers. You can watch it on the CBN News channel and also on our YouTube page. And on this show, every day, we dive deep. It's a little more longer form with one of the people who you will often see on our Newsmakers show or across the CBN News platforms. On today's Newsmakers, Jeff King, president of International Christian Concern, is warning that a shocking bill making its way through Iraq's parliament would legalize child rape. He joins me to discuss this shocking issue. Here is Jeff King. Jeff, we have a lot to talk about today concerning Iraq. There is reportedly a proposed law there to lower the age of consent for young girls from 18 years old to 9 years old. What in the world is going on? What is this proposal?
Well, at a simple level, look, this is fundamentalist Islam. This comes from the Hadiths. This is common throughout the fundamentalist Islamic world. Basically, Muhammad had numerous wives. He married his favorite wife at 9 years old. So this is the Iranian-controlled Shia-backed parliament. And they are voting with their faith and saying if Muhammad did it, and this is the way they view it. They look at Muhammad like we look at Jesus. So if he did it, it's right and just and from God. So that's why they're pushing ahead of this. The rest of the world, we look at this and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But for them, it's religion.
Obviously it's implicit in the age of consent when you're talking about lowering that from 18 to 9 years old. I think we understand what that means, but let's break it down. Yeah. If this law passes, what happens?
So first of all, let me give you the bold headline. This legalizes child rape, okay? And a side comment, Billy, is I think you probably agree. I think there'd be a bigger outcry if this allowed the rape of 9-year-old boys. I think we'd have a bigger outcry. But this is really horrific, but not surprising. And we just have to push back on it. And there's numerous ways to do it. And it's also just kind of a legacy of the first Iraq war. We basically gave the country to Iran.
Well, and I mean, I think a lot of people haven't thought a lot about Iraq probably, right? Let's be honest, in recent years, because the world has been on fire in so many other ways. It's not an active war that we're in anymore. So it's easy to no longer think about it. But let's pull back from this and we'll come back to it because it is absolutely horrific. What is the situation right now in Iraq when it comes to, let's say, the rule of law, the Islamic rule of law, and also persecution of Christians? Let's talk broadly about what's happening currently in Iraq.
Yeah. So, first of all, with the rule of law, look, there are laws on the books right now where the age of consent is 18, but you've probably got 30% of the population that is following this practice already. And so I should have mentioned that previously. It's like in the end, this is horrific, but look, it's going on anyways. And so if that's allowed, there's also plenty of persecution. We're very active in Iraq as an organization. We have been for years. And I can tell you that persecution is alive and well.
If you're a Christian, or let's say you convert to Christianity in Iraq, you're in a Muslim family, you become a Christian, your family finds out, your community finds out, what are some of the things that could happen to you?
Yeah, and as you know, it really depends on the level of fundamentalism. So that's really just the broad gauge. So if it's a very fundamentalist family, it can be very typical that you are going to be kidnapped and beaten. That would probably be the lowest level, the lowest response. And then you'd be tortured. It would go up to, weeks of torture and even murder. And it's typically done, this is so hard for Westerners to understand, but it's typically done by the family.
It's unimaginable, right? I mean, this is something that would be illegal, obviously, here. If it happened, it should be illegal everywhere for you to harm or kill a family member simply because they have chosen a different way of thinking, a different way of thought or religion. I bring up the persecution issue. Obviously, you're an expert in this arena, but I think it speaks to the broader issues that are going on in Iraq. And we come back to this issue of the age of consent.
Yeah.
As you said, it's already happening, right? So even though the law says 18, it's already happening. People are looking the other way, I assume, in those circumstances. But if this becomes law, and before we even go there, I should mention the women in government in Iraq. There are women in government. They have been fighting back against this, but to no avail, right? They have not had any success in pushing back to stop this bill.
Yeah, and so that kind of underscores the need for Western response and for Christian response. So, apart from it's horrific and sinful, we just need to support, basic human rights and the protection of children. And we need to stand up for these women. They're Muslims for the most part, but oh my gosh, we just have to stand up for them. I don't even know what to say except that we need to be calling our representatives. We should be calling the White House and asking for UN pressure. And everyone should be calling in their country. They should be calling the Iraqi embassy or their extended office and be very vocal. So be polite, but be stern and vocal. And that's, in the end, that will give the ladies that are pushing back support. And it speaks to a broader issue, but you go ahead.
Go talk about the broader issue, because I think that is, people will hear a story like this and it's one piece of a very complicated puzzle. So go ahead and explain that.
Well, oh gosh, this is probably about as broad as you can get. But for me, the way I think about this is that, we have to think about what happened to Christianity in the Reformation. And, so think about Christianity, what it used to be up until the medieval period. So if you argued with the church, you could end up on a stake, being burned, all kinds of horrible things. And through the Reformation, we were kind of forced, so that Christianity and the power structures that were forced to open up themselves to criticism. And that's what really hasn't happened in Islam. I'm going to be talking about this in an op-ed. It's just like, this is a broad issue that just points to that thing. And the press then needs to be vocal. We need to expose, and we need to name and shame, and to push people into modernity, and again, to support the Iraqi female NGOs and parliamentarians who are pushing back on this.
Well, I mean, you think about the fact that at 18, being old enough, not that there's not still manipulation in these cultures, but being old enough to make a decision. I can't even believe we have to talk about this, but if you're a 9-year-old girl and you suddenly can consent to marriage, which, let's be honest, I have a 9-year-old daughter who would have no idea what any of this even meant. It's horrific. Yeah. What happens in this circumstance? Who is it that is pledging them to marriage? What sorts of horrible situations can unfold with this? Just help us really understand what this looks like if it becomes institutionalized as something that is okay to happen in Iraq.
Well, Billy, I think you just nailed it right there. So if you have a young daughter, you already know, you just imagine that. And very typically, they're married to someone minimum 40 years old, up to 70, 80 years old. And it means if there was consent, if it's not violent, that's one thing, and that's horrific enough. But it also means child rape, can mean child rape. But regardless, it's just so barbaric. And again, we just have to speak up and criticize. And Islam can't get a pass. They can't throw a temper tantrum when the world disagrees with them. They can't attack people that disagree with them, and et cetera. And they can't kill their relatives if they choose to, go to another faith. This is really basic human rights. But again, it pushes this obvious thing where they need to be pushed to modernity.
Your organization, International Christian Concern, you mentioned the work that you do in Iraq. Talk a little bit more about that work and how people can come alongside you and help.
Yeah, well, we were there for years, and we were there when ISIS was attacking. We were probably, I think it was 10, 20 miles from the front lines. And basically, ISIS went into the Christian areas and they emptied them all out and destroyed the towns, destroyed the wells, everything. They wanted to end Christianity that has been in Iraq for 1,000 years, really since the very beginning, right? And So we were there, and we've done everything since. So we've really tried to rebuild the Christian areas. We rebuilt businesses, the drilling of wells. We just do all kinds of work, but the victimization keeps going on. And all that legacy of damage, is awaiting repair. And of course, what we're doing is a drop in the bucket compared to the need.
Well, people can also go to your website, persecution.org, to find out more information on the work that you do around the globe. I appreciate you coming on today, breaking this horrific story down. We're going to continue to cover it. We'll have you back as there are new developments, because there will be a second vote on this at some point there in the Iraqi parliament, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Billy, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time. That's all for today's Newsmakers podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the show, and also head over to the CBN News YouTube channel and the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We'll see you soon.